So I was in the Republican Party leadership for a while, and with the success of that event, I was kind of a big name in the Republican Party. Nobody outside of Iron County, but in Iron County, Utah, they were like, wow, there's this up-and-coming guy. He owns a business. He has money. He can throw around a little bit. He can put on a really big event. The Republican Party in Iron County is still spending that money.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's good. You
like
did it
6 years later.
You nailed it.
And yeah, good job.
Good job, Brad.
Cherry on top, right? So 2 years later, there was this big fight in the State Central Committee. And a guy was going to run for county commissioner, and he was on the State Central Committee, and he said, I can't run for county commissioner and be a city councilman and be involved in this fight in the Republican Party. I can't do all of them. So he resigned. And they said, okay, we need to appoint somebody to the State Central Committee in the Republican Party. Brad Green's the up-and-coming guy. He's the secretary of the party. Let's appoint him. We can replace the secretary every day. No problem. So I went to the State Central Committee of the Republican Party, and I had those fights. I was actually the 51st member of the infamous Gang of 51. I don't know if you remember the SB 54 battles of like 2018, 2019. Nope. And we had some really interesting civil discourse and disagreement in the Republican Party, trying to have the Republican Party grapple with the dysfunction that resulted from legislative kind of takeover of their primary process. And the following year, they reorganized every 2 years, they redo the governing bodies of the Republican Party, including the State Central Committee. And I got elected on the audit committee, and then they elected me in that committee as the chairman of the audit committee of the State Republican Party. And so I was on the executive committee. I was in the State Central Committee, and I was heavily involved in politics, fielding candidates in Iron County. And what I discovered was that the State Republican Party was severely broken. In 2 years of meetings, executive committee meetings, only one time did they have enough people to the meeting to actually conduct business. They did not have a quorum for 23 of 24 meetings. And as the audit committee chairman, I recognized that they were bouncing their checkbook nearly every month.
And this is
multiple
what year?
Times. This is 2019, 2020.
This is crazy. Okay. All right.
And they bounced their rent check all the time.
Wow.
This is the party that everybody says runs the state. Yeah. Like everybody's like, yeah, the Republican Party runs everything. I mean, 80% of our House and Senate in the state are Republicans. But the Republican Party itself has basically been used as a rubber stamp on politicians that have sway. And they don't care about the Republican Party's principles, many of them, some do. Realistically, what they want is the Republican Party stamp of approval on their campaign, because the people that aren't involved, that aren't being informed, that aren't reaching out and getting the information, they're just like, well, he's a Republican. The Democrats, at least at the national stage, are crazy. I'm going to vote for the Republican because that's the only real option.
Yeah,
and so the Republican Party
they
brand
think that's
is all
who's going to win
matters.
anyway. They think they're like, well, I don't want to vote for somebody that's not going to win, right? So they just go along party lines.
And so it's become a horse race. Which horse is going to win? It's the Republicans. And so we are what nationally they call a one-party state, generally speaking. There's 38 states that are in similar plight. More than half are Republican, some are Democrat. Well, so in 2021, I saw how the legislature had continued to slide up the election deadlines, so that what makes the Republican Party's process beautiful, which is vetting candidates and specialization of delegates, it's almost like Jefferson's ward system.
Yeah.
So that's what makes that's what has historically made the Republican Party effective at fielding good candidates. It's basically been broken because the delegates now don't have time to vet candidates. And they don't really have a real good vetting process, and they're not really specializing in it. Basically, people are showing up to caucus night, and that's always been a bit of a popularity contest. But because there aren't a bunch of neighborhoods actually involved, they don't know how their neighbors think about politics. They don't know how their neighbors values, because we don't interact with each other. And
I'll tell you this experience I had.
Go ahead.
So the special election, right? It's it was a scramble as a Republican. And I moved here from California in 2015, and I was a registered independent in California. And I moved here, and I was still an independent. And then I realized I was like, oh, I can't vote in Republican primaries as an independent. It's like, well, I guess I'll change it. I'll sign up to be a Republican, I guess. So I'm registered
because rarely is, especially in rural Utah, rarely is there a Democrat that's really expecting to win running.
Exactly.
So the whole battle for quality candidates generally has happened in the Republican primary.
And so that's where I registered. So then, come the special election, I was like, well, I'm definitely, because I had already made a conscious thought that this is what we're going to do this year. Municipal elections, 3 seats in every city. It's a voting majority. You have this possibility you could swing, the momentum of any city. I was under the personal belief that St. George and a couple of cities in southern Utah for sure needed a change of guard, if you will. And so I was like, I'm going to get active in this. This is normally the least amount of participation in elections is in this municipal election, right? So
it's nonpartisan.
Yeah, it's nonpartisan.
People can't pick Republicans, so they're not really sure what to do.
Exactly. And it's like you end up with all these signs, but there's no, especially in St. George, there's no outlet to go learn about the candidates. And then you got to get in. If you're not in the club, you don't get invited to the meet and greets. And if you're not on this Facebook group or that Facebook group, you just get left out, right? So. Yep. I'd already made this conscious effort, but then the special election popped up and I was like, oh shoot, I want to, figure out what's going on with the Republican Party. I had a hell of a time just finding who my delegates were in Ivins. I'm like, I went to a meet and greet and I was like, can somebody tell me who my delegates are for Ivins 6? I was like, I know what district I'm in, but I don't even know where to find. And I sent 3 emails to the party asking specifically to get a list of the delegates.
How long ago was this?
This was right before the debates.
This year?
This year.
Okay. So Lisa Sanderson's the party chair.
So I send the message out. No responses.
Okay.
Go to a meet and greet. I ask the question. Finally, I reach out to Michelle Tanner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She's fairly responsive.
I'm like, hey, will you help me? And I'd already done an interview with her, like, right. So and I'd already been kind of engaged, and I got invited to that meet and greet to meet Bill Hoster. Bill Hoster, right?
I think it's Holster, but
Holster.
It could be Hoster. I don't know. I'm a libertarian. Remember, I don't know these people.
I know. So I got invited to that. I asked that question, and finally I get an email, and it legitimately says, "Don't share this list." And I won't tell you who sent it to me. It wasn't Michelle. I won't tell you who sent it to me, but it said, "Don't share this list."
It's just a delegate list.
It's a delegate list,
and they're all worried about privacy.
I guess
probably because campaigns spam delegates like you can't believe.
I
but
get
not only that, like the parties kind of hold their list tight so that they can. They're required to be neutral, but privately they can be more helpful to some than others.
So there's like this barrier of entry, right? And so I'm like, well. Like, how much effort would you have to go in? Like, you have to really be serious to go and get the information to be able to say, hey, I met this person and this person, and I'd love for you, on my behalf, would you vote for this person when you go to the delegate caucus?